So today we'll start with post-structuralism. I have already talked to you about structuralism. Structuralism understood that everything in this world can be understood in terms of structures. And these structures contain meaning. Meaning is these structures carry meaning. Meaning is unstable and attributed by the onlooker or the reader. And it is language that constructs our understanding of reality. Even though structuralism understood that there are no essences in this world, even though meanings are not there as prerequisites or pre-given entities, meanings can be attributed. Post-structuralism belongs to a world when the technology had moved on to the digital phase, electronic and digital phase. Television had come, and the understanding of reality had changed considerably. Post-structuralism came as a reaction against structuralism, as you know. It continues many of the ideas of structuralism. Jacques Derrida, for example, began as a structuralist theorist, speaking about structuralism and against it. Structuralism believed that reality is not a permanent, unchanging entity, but reality can be understood by the human mind as existing in a certain way. In other words, there is no given meaning within a text, but meaning can be attributed and understood by a reader. Post-structuralism understands meaning as very, very plural and provisional. You cannot even attribute meanings to a text because meanings keep coming and going. The understanding of reality and meaning are as flux, as changing always. This kind of an unsettling experience of reality permeates all postmodernist art. Reality is not a permanent thing. Reality is not what we expect. That idea of disconcertment or trauma related to the understanding of reality is there in all post-structuralist, postmodern texts and art. Look at Salvador Dali's Persistence of Memory again. In this painting, you can see clocks lying like wet rags. This is an idea that this is an image that conveys the idea that reality has betrayed us, time has betrayed us, history has betrayed us. There is Marcel Duchamp's Mona Lisa, but look at the mustache and the beard. Mona Lisa, upside down also he has drawn to show that reality is not what it seems. There is no expected permanent meaning to anything around us. That idea is conveyed through these art forms. As you know, post-structuralism was spearheaded by the very important theorist Jacques Derrida. He was an Algerian Jewish philosopher. His identity as Algerian and Jewish has highly informed his theories. His existence on the margins and understanding of a center as not what it seems permeates all of Derrida's thinking and theory. Post-structuralism is said to have begun from Derrida's very famous essay, Structure, Sign and Play in the Discourse of the Human Sciences, which he delivered at Johns Hopkins University. In the 1960s, Europe and America were completely changing in so many different ways. And Derrida was responding to the changes or the paradigm shifts in his times. His life as a Jew in Algeria and his experiences have all informed his writings. His writings have drawn largely from his own autobiographical experiences. Derrida lived at a time when a lot of philosophers were changing the perceptions of art and reality and society, like Jacques Lacan, Deleuze and Guattari, Michel Foucault. And this was the time when a lot of challenges were made against the mainstream cultural ideologies. There was a lot of socio-political unrest at this time. There was the coming of many new approaches like Husserl's phenomenology, which influenced Derrida himself very importantly. It was a time when French thinkers dominated over Western philosophy. And Foucault was revolutionizing our understanding of established ideas in his books like Madness and Civilization or The Birth of the Clinic, etc. Derrida just imbibed the spirit of the approaches of the time, and he defined his approach as deconstructive. Deconstruction is looking at how an idea comes into being and why it stays with us, why an idea or why a text appears to be what it is, why it has acquired these meanings. In other words, deconstruction is anti-essentialist. It believes that everything is acquired or constructed. Everything acquires meaning. Nothing has given meanings. Everything is constructed. This is a philosophical exercise that Derrida was applying on established knowledges at this time. And he, in his Structure, Sign and Play, in the Discourse of the Human Sciences, argued that the concept of structure in philosophy has a very prominent role. He highlighted the concept of structure because he was a structuralist at that time. He highlighted the concept of structure in society, in social sciences and philosophy. And he looked at how elements within the structure get meaning through their relationships within the structure. And he began to look at the concept of center that holds together the structure. And he argued in a very philosophical manner that a center is not a center. The center is not the center. That is what he argued in his paper. And this paper also signaled Derrida's pronouncement that the model of structure has come to an end. The idea of structure has been put under erasure or questioning, and the idea of structure has come to an end. And this essay was followed the very next year by his three famous books, Speech and Phenomena, of Grammatology, Writing and Difference, and Speech and Phenomena. These established the ideas or the principles of post-structuralism and deconstruction. And many later theorists took up these ideas. The idea of post-structuralism mainly is that of decentering. The center does not remain as a center. The center is influenced by the periphery, and the center keeps being decentered. There is no permanent center. In other words, the lack of a permanent center points to the lack of a fixed structure. Structure is not a fixed entity. It's not a fixed idea. And as everybody knows, Derrida also questioned the notion of presence. The notion of presence depends upon the very concept of absence. In Binary Oppositions put forth by Saussure, he had talked about one present idea being on the opposite side of an absent idea. So we have day against night, we have white against black, we have man against woman, we have rich against poor. Similarly, Derrida showed that the center or the notion of presence depends upon the notion of absence. In other words, he proved that this binary opposition does not exist. There is no validity to this binary opposition. The center dissipates or deconstructs itself into multiple meanings. So what Derrida was doing with this exercise of decentering was to prove that basic questions in metaphysics, or the meanings of basic concepts in metaphysics, can thus be questioned. This was an idea that was already there in Nietzsche and Heidegger, and they influenced Derrida. Derrida was influenced by, and he was influential on, Claude Lévi-Strauss, about whom he talks about in Structure, Sign, and Play, and especially the binary opposition in Claude Lévi-Strauss between nature and culture. That is a very basic binary opposition, as we have seen yesterday. And when Derrida questions Lévi-Strauss's concept of the bricolier, he says that everything is bricolage. Every knowledge is bricolage. When he does that, he's actually decentering Claude Lévi-Strauss. He is proving that the age of Lévi-Strauss has come to an end, and there is a new change coming up in literary theory and philosophy. That is what he means. Derrida has many other concepts associated with him, such as the concept of difference. The concept of metaphysics of presence, or the privileging of presence, is invariably related to the concept of the concept of logocentrism. Logos is word, the word of God, the word that is authority. And logocentrism is the authority of the word, the authority of the powerful person, the authority of God. And Derrida questions this logocentrism in Western philosophy. All of you are attending this webinar because you believe that there is something in my presence and in my speech that will give you as meaning. When I explain something, it is like, I or anybody explains something, it is like the presence of the speaker gives value and meaning and centrality to the speech. Derrida is questioning this concept of logos, which is based on presence. That is the critique of logocentrism that he put forth. And he also particularly critiqued phonocentrism, which is the critique of the centrality of sound. We give more importance to the person. If I say, okay, there is no webinar, you have all enrolled, I will give you just reading material, you will not be happy. You need reading material after the lecture. You want the lecture, but after that you want the reading material. That means what? There is a lack in my speech. The lack is that you will forget it. The lack is that it will disappear. It will be lost. So that lack in my speech you are trying to overcome by writing. When you write notes or when you want a PDF, you are actually trying to overcome the lack in my speech. So Derrida proved that the concept of logos contains this speech and this writing on paper. Against this speech and this writing on paper, or against logos, he coined the term écriture, or he privileged the term écriture. We'll come to all that through examples. I have enough and more examples given here. As I speak about the examples, you will get more idea. This is a scene from Waiting for Godot, as you might understand. This is a scene where Vladimir and Estragon are waiting below a leafless tree, and they are blabbering and talking to each other in non sequitur dialogues without making sense. And this play is a classic example of decentering. In this play, you can see that the main protagonist, Godot, for whom they're all waiting, is completely decentered. He doesn't even come. He is not there. The centrality of the human being is thus replaced. It is, given up metaphorically in this play, Waiting for Godot. You can see that in all modernist texts, this decentralization happened in different ways. There is a decentering of man in the wasteland also. You can see that, as Eliot himself said, Tiresias is the protagonist, but Tiresias does not even appear in the wasteland very much. Like Hamlet appears in the wasteland, Tiresias is not there in the wasteland. Hamlet is there from scene 1, but Tiresias appears only briefly in the part 3 of Wasteland, and it is like all characters in the Wasteland are Tiresiases. It is like all characters are in some way Tiresiases. Just a minute. Yes. So I hope you understood through this example the concept of decentering. Decentering is a very basic thing in post-structuralism, which is a response to the Second World War, a response to all the post-war traumas, uh, metaphorically expressed in literary works of the time. Post-structuralism is a philosophy that is actually putting into theory what was actually happening in the society. Post-structuralism is putting into theory what was actually being written by the authors in texts and by the artists. You can see that artistic examples are also there. From the time of the Victorian period, or the late 19th century, or decadence, we have had examples of decentering in art. For example, take Impressionism. Impressionism, or any modern art for that matter. Humanistic art of Michelangelo onwards, or Da Vinci onwards, presented reality as seen by an author or an artist. The artist is presenting reality before us. The artist is presenting his vision of reality as if it is the truth. That is how it is. When you look at Michelangelo's paintings or sculptures, or Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, you see Da Vinci there. Da Vinci, the author, is speaking to us and telling us, okay, this is the meaning, this is reality. But modern art is very different. In modern art, or the Wasteland, for example, it looks like the author is confused. It looks like the author doesn't have anything sure to say. The author is completely leaving it to us. The author is depicting reality in a very confusing terms, using different colors, playing with form and color and size and shape and everything. He is not presenting a very clear cut representation of reality at all. That is how modernist art is, like Cubism or Impressionism or Expressionism. And modernist art, in a way, therefore, shows the decentering of the author. The author is not the authority in the text anymore. So from the time of modernism, this was there. Modernism lamented, modernist art lamented the decentering of man, while postmodernism is celebrating the decentering of man. That is the difference. Modernist art also presented decentering of man, but modernist art lamented. That is what happens in the Wasteland. In the Wasteland, there is a lamentation of the decentering of man. All people are traumatized. Everybody is living a death in life existence. And the artist is hoping that by going to the banks of the Ganges, or by resorting to the Upanishads, etc., some sort of meaning and unity can be brought into human societies and human life. Did you understand? In postmodernism, however, there is no such lament. There is no attempt to give any sort of unity. Look at magic realist texts like the book Midnight's Children, or 100 Years of Solitude, etc. In those books, which are magic realist as well as postmodernism includes genres like magic realism. And Postmodernism or magic realism shows that it is impossible to have any reality, any coherent reality. It is impossible to have meaning. It is impossible to have fixed identities, because man is decentered from all philosophical discourses. So that is the idea of decentering. And when you decenter man, you decenter the logos also. When you decenter man, you decenter the logos. Logos means word, the word of God, the word that brings reason, the word that brings wisdom. Logos means metaphysics of presence. So all this is at once questioned and decentered in post-structuralism. Now, this is a picture that shows the flight of an arrow. It was Jonathan Culler who famously talked about Zeno's paradox as an example of post-structuralist idea of difference. Jonathan Culler is a very important theorist. He talked about the pre-Socratic philosopher Zeno. Zeno gave many paradoxes in order to prove his points. If an arrow is moving from one point to another like this, if an arrow is moving from one point to another, at each point of its movement, is the arrow static or in motion? That is the question. Is at every point of the arrow's flight, is the arrow static or in motion? Now, what will happen if you think that the arrow is in motion? Then how come at each point, if you take a snapshot of the arrow, you will find the arrow static at one point, right? That means the arrow is static at every point. At the same time, it is in motion. So these two are coexisting. The arrow is static as well as in motion. The arrow is static as well as in motion. That is what happens. It is coexisting. And Jonathan Culler thereby proved that meaning exists like this. Meaning is there, but not there. This is what he proved by the flight of an arrow. When Jonathan Culler used this example of Zeno's paradox, he is trying to show that the post-structuralist concept of difference means that meaning is there, but it is eternally postponed. For example, what is the meaning of the word red? Yesterday, rose, for example. Yesterday we were talking about it. What is the meaning of the word rose? Rose means flower, but it is postponed. It is not only flower, it is also perfume. It is also a girl. It is also a color. It is also death. Yesterday, remember the example of tree? I showed you the example of tree, and tree means so many different kinds of trees. Leafless tree, Christmas tree, this tree, that tree. Along with that, tree also means life. It means food. It means shelter. So many other things also. Like that, every word is present there, but even at the same time, it is absent. Every word has meanings that are present, but that are also absent. That is the meaning of meaning is there, but not there. For example, when you say one word, for example, your friend, my husband, let me give you the example of my husband. I cook something for my husband. I ask him, is it good? Do you like it? And he says, yeah, good. I feel sad. He did not say it is excellent. He did not say it is so delicious. It's wonderful. It's mind-blowing. Like that extreme superlatives, he did not say, I'm sad. And then he says, why are you sad? I said it is good. But that good, sometimes good might mean bad also. It might not always mean the same thing. Sometimes good means very good. Sometimes good means not so good. Both it can mean. When somebody always gives you a lot of praise, that person, when he says good, it looks like he didn't like it. But when somebody never gives you any praise, when that person says good, you feel like, wow, that is a lot of praise, isn't it? Like that, every word contains traces of absent meanings. That is the word trace. Every word contains traces of absent meanings. Meanings are there, but also not there. And absent meanings are there like traces. What do you mean by a trace? For example, you are an individual. Your mother is not there with you. You are an independent individual, isn't it? But the umbilical cord by which you were connected to your mother, that umbilical cord, that belly button or navel that we have, that is a trace of your absent mother. Your mother is no longer there, but you still carry the trace of your mother. That mark is a reminder that there was once a mother as part of you, or you are part of your mother. Did you understand? So all these are examples to illustrate what is the concept of difference. Difference means difference plus deferment. Deferment means postponement. All meanings get their, all words get their meaning in terms of difference. For example, this is green, this is pink. This is green, this is pink. We know this is green because this is not blue, this is not yellow, this is not any other color. The meaning of this green is in comparison to other colors. Because it is not pink, this is green. But at the same time, green, the meaning of green is not a fixed thing. There are so many different greens. The color of my sari is one green. The color of this paper is another green. Sometimes, let me give you an example. I went to buy a matching blouse for this sari. Okay, I went to buy a matching blouse for this sari, and I bought yellow blouse. I went to buy a green blouse, but I thought, okay, yellow blouse is better, so I bought a yellow blouse. What does that mean? Yellow blouse is a green blouse. Did you understand? Yellow blouse is, I am wearing yellow blouse instead of a green blouse. It is interchangeable. That means yellow is green. In philosophy, you can prove like that. This is like syllogism. So, green contains yellow. Yellow contains green. That is the meaning. Did you understand? Let us take a look at another example. This is an illustration of difference. You have a glass of water here. You have a glass of water here. Imagine I poured one drop of poison into it. Poison it is. And I stir it well in front of you. I pour poison, one drop. I stir it well in front of you and give you to drink. Will you drink it? No. Why won't you drink it? I said, there is no poison here. You can't see anything. Can you see poison? Drink it. You will say, no, I won't drink it. Even though it is not visible, there are traces of absent poison. Even though poison is not there as presence. If it is a stone that I am putting into this water, it will be there as presence. But a drop of poison or ink that is mixed into the water is absence. But it is a trace. It is a trace. That means it is absent, but it leaves a mark. Every word has marks or traces of absent meanings. Presence has traces of absence. For example, this is your middle one is your present. You are here because of your past and because of your future. You are listening to this webinar because you are going to be professors or you are going to be research scholars or something or the other. What you are going to be in future decides what you do now. What you do now is decided by your past also. Probably because we did not study properly in the past, that is why we have to study now. That also we can say. Or you in the past you got interested in literary theory, so now you are studying it even more. Like that also you can say. So all presences contain traces of absence. Narendra Modi ji comes in front of us on the TV and speaks with vehement voice, with gestures like this. He will speak. What is he doing? He is asserting presence. When a speaker speaks like that, presence is asserted. If instead of speaking before the people, if he gives one email to everybody, will that be sufficient? An email that he sends to everybody, will that be sufficient? No. He has to come in front of the people and give a speech. That is what he is thinking. Why is he giving that? Because that is presence. And all presences, are what we prefer to absence. Always it is presence that we want. If I switch off the video and give you a lecture without the video, you will say, ask me to switch on the video. Why? Because you want to see me speak. You want to see my gestures. You are thinking that through my speech, through my expressions, through my gestures, you are getting meaning. You are getting rationality. That is what you're thinking. That is why, because speech is presence. Derrida questioned this. Saussure said that speech is more important than writing. But there is a question that this speech, which is presence, is actually because made possible by absence. When I mute all of you and you are sitting quietly there, without making any noise, without drawing on the screen, you are agreeing to be absent so that I can be presence. If all of you start speaking, if all of you start telling your own ideas of post-structuralism, I cannot speak. I will no longer remain as the center or speech or presence. So my centrality is dependent on your marginality. It is because you are agreeing to be the margin. That it is because you are there that I am here. If you did not attend the webinar, I will not be the speaker. It is because of you that I am here. So Derrida is saying this privileging of speech is wrong. That is logocentrism. That is phonocentrism. This speech and the writing that you do immediately after this writing, both together is logos. This speech and this writing together, logos. And logos is against écriture. Écriture is a experience. When I am speaking, I am also writing in your brain. You are getting impressions. You are seeing some images or text or something you are seeing in your mind. I am writing on your brain. Your brain is expressing itself in some idea, in some images and thoughts. That, all that is happening in the society around us in the form of knowledges and understanding and deliberations, all that is part of écriture. When one person speaks, for example, when the teacher speaks, that is logos. But when the students scribble some doodles in their book, when they pass letters, when they ask a question against the teacher, when they make fun of the teacher because they find the teacher not interesting, all that is part of écriture. When Shakespeare wrote The Tempest, that text, Tempest is the logos. But adaptations of the Tempest, criticism against the Tempest, people who have interpreted and misinterpreted the Tempest, all that is part of écriture. If you did not understand still, I will show you more. Sorry. Speech is presence. Listen to this. Look at the screen. It is changing. Speech is presence. Speech is logos. Speech is thought. All these speech is attributed with, and speech is law. If everybody is making noise, I will say, quiet, listen to me. That is my speech. That speech is law. Immediately when the teacher says that, all the students will keep quiet, right? And speech is reason. You think that speech brings reason. It is very important that we are able to speak out our mind. Otherwise, people will not understand us. Otherwise, people will not take us for granted. People with a great power of speaking, they exercise reason. The politics of presence as against the politics of ideas. This is some research topic that you can ponder on. Political representation of minorities and disadvantaged people. You can do research on this if you want. How far is political representation of minorities taking place? How is it happening? How is it manipulated by authorities? You can do the political representation of the farmers' strike if you want as a research paper. And you can do discourse analysis of the narratives and documents that are involved in it. If you are wondering, okay, I understood what is presence and absence, but what is the meaning? Why is it important? This is why it is important. Because how far does your presence, how far is your presence a political entity? How far are ideas getting translated into present politics? That idea is very, very important. If you did not understand, or if you are feeling bored, I will tell you one story. Are you ready to listen to a story? Listen to this. Let me tell you a touching story. It's a very touching story, okay? It's really going to make your eyes wet. Are you ready to cry, everybody? Listen to this. There was this Chinese man who finally married his beloved after many years of waiting. This man could not marry at first, but after many years of waiting, finally he got to marry his sweetheart. On their first night, he told her something very shocking. And this is what he said. Ta-dang! Chinese. You can't read. This is writing. You don't make sense of it. Poor girl. She could hardly take it. This is the end of the story. I made fools of you. I got this from WhatsApp. I hope you remember. This was a WhatsApp forward many years ago. What does it mean? Oh, what a touching story. Did you feel it is touching? You did not feel it is touching because you don't understand what is written here. Writing is absence. It is speech that is presence. Imagine that you are watching a movie when this Chinese man is speaking to his beloved in Chinese. At least from the gestures and expression and intonation, etc., you will be able to make out something. But when it is writing, you are not able to make out anything. Writing is absence. Speech is presence. That is the idea. Look at this. This is a metro rail. In some city, this is a metro. What is this? This is the metro being built. Why am I showing you these two things? Because this is logos, this is écriture. Did you understand what I'm saying? The metro, the finished product is the logos. When you look at this, you don't see all the trauma of these laborers, all the people who are waiting here in traffic block, all the people who got lungs infection because of the dust, all the contractors who lost money trying to build this metro, all the politicians who swindled money out of it. So many backstories are there. So many things other than this. Behind this, there are so many things. That is called écriture. It is not enough to have logos. It is important to have écriture. Logos is incomplete. It is only a part of the large institution of writing. Écriture is the entirety of writing. I hope you understand. Look at this. This is the published wasteland. This is the editing of the wasteland. Many lines are cut out. Many lines are rewritten. This is logos. This is écriture. How is my example? Did you understand? This finished product is logos. This is the product and this is the process. The process of writing is called écriture. Now, this is a very famous image that everybody knows. This is the peeling of an onion. This is nothing but deconstruction. Deconstruction peels the text layer after layer, looking at what is inside. The text is peeled and peeled and peeled layer after layer. And ultimately, when you peel, finally, what do you get? Do you get a little onion? Do you get any meaning inside the onion? Nothing you get. You peel off layer after layer after layer. At the end, nothing you get, right? This is the process of deconstruction. Deconstruction peels off layers of the text, giving multiple meanings. At the end, there is no final meaning. This is deconstructionist architecture. In Poland, there is this crooked house. You know, there are no straight, permanent structures. This structure gives a feeling of fluidity. This structure gives a feeling of fluidity. These days, in many cities, we have floating restaurants. Restaurant as a permanent entity, but restaurant that is floating a little bit like this. That is a post-structuralist, deconstructionist concept of architecture. This is a very famous post-structuralist building built by Bernard Schumi. This is called Urban Park. And this was discussed by Derrida himself. Within the park, there is this urban park. This building is called Urban Park. This is the famous Peter Eisenman's Emery Towers in Atlanta, I think. Emery Towers. Look at the deconstructionist roof, the deconstructionist structure of the building. What is this? I went to the beach and I wrote Kalyani here. What will happen? The waves will come and wipe it off. Now it is not getting wiped off, but usually what will happen? The waves will come and see, wiped off. You can't see the word anymore. All of us do that. This is écriture. Écriture is not permanent writing. Écriture is characterized by difference. Écriture is erasable. It will get erased. It is not there to stay permanently. Did you understand? The waves will come and wipe off the writing on the sand. Like that, literature is not permanent writing. It is characterized by difference. It gets postponed. It does not remain there permanently. Like a cork on the water. Like a cork on the water. Meaning is like this. Like a cork on the water, meaning is not there, permanent structure, but it is everywhere in the water. Sometimes you see it here, sometimes you see it there. It is moving, it is fluid, it is unstable. Did you understand? Now, Roland Barthes talked about the author God being displaced, isn't it? Look at the author God, Ganapati or Ganesh, writing Mahabharata. The author God is the authority, the permanent source of meaning, but the author God should be displaced. This is also another example of author God. Creation of Adam, painting is another example of God as a permanent presence there. That author is wiped off. Like Kalyani, the writing on the sand was wiped off. This author is wiped off and replaced by the reader. In place of the author, we have now the reader. The reader becomes the writer. This is what Roland Barthes said. The reader becomes the writer. The reader begins to write the text. The author did not write the text completely. He left half meanings. The reader took over and he began writing the text. This is the concept of death of the author. I am using these very easy examples and illustrations to remind you the key things about post-structuralism. And what is this? This is a quilt that is being made by many hands. A text is like a quilt. A text is like a tissue of quotations. Many bits and pieces put together to create one text. Text is not one piece of cloth. The text is a tissue. The text is like a quilt that is put together from many small pieces. I hope you understand that. Text is a tissue or fabric of quotations drawn from innumerable centers of culture rather than from one individual experience. This plurality of the text. It is not one experience. It is not one structure. The plurality of the text is what you see here, isn't it? And another very important example to illustrate post-structuralism is the Tower of Babel from the Bible. Our Pieter Bruegel. One minute. Yeah. Yes. Pieter Bruegel was a very famous artist. He has painted the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel is what all people are speaking in different languages there. There is complete cacophony in the Tower of Babel because people are speaking in different languages. Everybody speaks in a different language, isn't it? And that kind of cacophony, that kind of plurality, that kind of confusion, that characterizes, that kind of descending, that characterizes post-structuralism. Post-structuralism is all about plurality of voices, as you can see in the Tower of Babel. This is a painting. Don't think my son drew it or some child drew it. This is a painting made by, can you guess? Anybody? Switch on your mic and tell me whose painting this is. Who made this painting? Can you guess? Not me, some theorist made. You, sorry. Who made this painting? Anybody? Are you there or am I speaking to the universe? Guess, some famous theorist made the painting. Who could it be? He has written something in French also. Huh? Roland Barthes, correct.
Yes.
This is a painting by Roland Barthes. If we had known it, we would have also made this painting, right?
Yes.
But you can't do it anymore because Roland Barthes already made it. If you think that is not enough, then here is another one by Roland Barthes. See, Roland Barthes has signed also. What does this mean? Text is a tissue of quotations or textualities, the polyphony, plurality, all the things that I was talking about, écriture, everything is contained in this painting. And then Roland Barthes talked about two kinds of texts. Texts that give comfortable pleasure and texts that unsettle you, that disturb you. Texts that give comfortable pleasure are readerly texts. You just have to read the text. Like a TV serial, for example. A TV serial is something that does not disturb you. You know what is going to happen. You can lie back on your couch and watch it comfortably. No problem. Whereas, if you are watching a parallel film or reading The Wasteland, if you just comfortably lie back like that, you won't understand anything. When you study The Wasteland, you have to sit up and create meanings and rack your brain and actively contribute, isn't it? This is a readerly text, whereas this is a writerly text. If you don't actively get involved and understand and create meanings, then this text will not mean anything. Whereas this text gives you all meanings on a plate. This is like fast food. It gives you all meanings on a platter. You have no doubt what it is. You have no confusion. Whereas here, the author is not giving you anything on a plate. It is not possible to understand. Did you understand? Then I look at some more post-structuralist approaches. How did contemporary ideas of sexuality come into being? This is a question raised by Michel Foucault. How did contemporary ideas of discipline come into being? What is involved in discipline? In Discipline and Punish, he is looking at prisons. He is also talking about schools and all sorts of institutions. Lunatic asylums, prisons, schools, all these have a panopticon approach. They exercise power over the marginal people and suppress them into silence. That is how discipline comes into being. How did contemporary ideas of education come into being? These are all questions that are raised by post-structuralists, and that can be answered by post-structuralist ideas. Now let us take a look at modernism and postmodernism. Did you like the presentation on post-structuralism? Did I give you a summary of all the ideas and a
Yes, ma'am. Like,
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm aware that many of you might know all these things, but when you teach or write, this application will give you probably a new perspective, and it will make it easier for you. Some of you are there who have not studied literary theory yet and who do not know very much. Some of you were telling me we are beginners. So for their sake, I was explaining everything in very great detail.
Sir, ma'am, thank you for the...
Awesome, ma'am.
Thank you. What were you saying? Were you asking me something? Yeah. Now, modernism and postmodernism. I will show you some avant-garde paintings. I was already referring to avant-garde paintings before and saying that in avant-garde paintings, the author does not force his ideas and meanings upon us. The author does not force us into thinking along his lines. In avant-garde paintings, there is a lot of freedom given to the viewer or the reader. And in avant-garde paintings, there are multiple meanings. Remember, it was Virginia Woolf who said, on or about December 1910, human nature changed. What does that mean? It means that patriarchy, colonialism, so many absolute ideas changed in the wake of the 20th century. And that is what is depicted by Van Gogh also in this painting, Starry Night. Things are not what they seem. Things are provisional. They are changing. They are getting plural meanings. Take a look at the next painting given here. Pablo Picasso's Blue Guitarist. You can see a fluidity, a depth of layers of emotion, layers of experience, layers of feeling that characterizes this man in the painting. It is not just a realistic painting. It is a painting that is comparable to Waiting for Godot, for example. What does this man have to say? And also there are no strings on the guitar, very significantly. Are there strings? I don't see any. Look at this painting by Pablo Picasso, La Dame d'Avignon. When we look long at this painting, we will be reminded that we probably resemble these women more than the beautiful women in realistic paintings. We depict these women, we represent these women rather than, we are also broken like this, fragmented like this, put together like this. This is reality. Realism cheats us. Realism is treachery. Compared to that, this is more real. Pablo Picasso shows the inner experiences of people, the inner realities of people, not only what is outside on the superficial outside, but what is inner. Look at André Matisse's famous painting of these dancers. We know that they are not doing any classical dance or anything. It is like a mad, wild, superhuman kind of or otherworldly kind of dance. All these paintings explore, these are all modernist paintings. All these paintings or modernism explores an alternate reality. What lies beyond this appearance of reality? Think of a book like The Sound and the Fury. Interestingly, the cover page of Sound and the Fury is reminiscent of André Matisse's dancers and these figures, etc. It is a modernist expression of sexuality and sin that you see here. In The Sound and the Fury, if you remember, which is a modernist text, you can see a whole family falling apart. The girl of the family, Caddy, is promiscuous, or she has premature sexuality, and she has many boyfriends, and she gets illegitimately pregnant, and she has an illegitimate child. And that sexuality of this girl is like a metaphor for the downfall or the disintegration of the whole family. You can see different characters in the family talking about this girl in different ways. You don't see one reality here. You see interpretations of reality. You see plural perspectives of reality. It is not one single perception of reality that you see here. Look at this modernist sculpture, Falling Water. The sculpture is the building, but it is built on a waterfall. And the sculpture is called Falling Water. That captures the fluidity of reality and experience. Look at another painting, Angelus Novus by Paul Klee. This painting was owned by Walter Benjamin. And this is the angel of history. The angel of history has spread his wings and is caught in the storm of progress. That is what Walter Benjamin said about this painting. This angel of history is caught in the storm of progress. And the angel of history is looking at the debris of the past lying in front of him. This painting is an expression of modernism. This painting shows the anxiety of modernism about the past and the future. You can see the same thing in The Wasteland and other modernist texts. Modernism is greatly anxious about the past that is lying in bits and pieces around them. Modernism is worried about the future. It doesn't know where it is heading, where it is going. The World War, the rise of technology, all that is part of modernism, modernist social reality was upsetting. And this is another depiction of the angel of history. You know, this is depicted in a realistic manner. Angelus Novus, the wings are caught and he is being thrown into the future and he's looking at the debris of the past. This painting expresses the spirit of modernism, as Walter Benjamin said. This is Sparagmos, or dismemberment of Orpheus. Orpheus was in love with Eurydice and he wanted to bring back Eurydice from hell when Eurydice died. And he tried to bring her back, but on the way he looked back and Eurydice disappeared. And later on, the Medusas, the Bacchanals, they tore Orpheus's body apart. They were angry that Orpheus is not paying attention to them, and they tore him apart, part by part, organ by organ. This concept of dismemberment of the Orpheus was used by Ihab Hassan as an expression of postmodernism. So modernism is what we saw before this. Until now, we saw modernism. Modernism is unhappy with the fragmentation. Modernism is unhappy that the world is lying in bits and pieces. Modernism is worried that its future is going to be bleak. It wants to somehow bring back order. Modernism wants to bring back order. But postmodernism realizes that disorder is there to stay. There is only disorder. There is no order possible. Order is impossible. Postmodernism uses the dismemberment of Orpheus as a supreme example of its condition. The dismemberment of Orpheus is a supreme example of its condition. Then there is Midnight's Children, the archetypal example of postmodernism. In Midnight's Children, on many occasions, you can see dismemberment. You know, there's a very famous example of, towards the end of Midnight's Children, the dismemberment of Shahid, one character. The dismemberment of the whole of India. India is falling apart in the book. And also the metaphoric falling apart of Salim Sinai. He is narrating this story to us because he is disintegrating. His body is disintegrating and he's falling apart. So dismemberment is a very important metaphoric device used in Midnight's Children. And the whole novel is full of broken pieces. A whole big narrative is broken up into pieces and presented to us. Michel Foucault, even though he was not completely a postmodernist, he questioned postmodernism and critiqued it and all that, but Michel Foucault is the supreme example of the postmodern spirit. When he looks at how monolithic ideas like the human mind or sexuality or identity, he showed that such monolithic ideas are actually bits and pieces. They are fragments. Now, take the example of India. There is, on the outside, India is one country, one people. There is a unity. Look at the national pledge of India. India is my country. All Indians are my brothers and sisters. I love my country. I am proud of its rich and varied heritage. It is true for most of us, but this idea of India as one entity is a myth. There are so many cultures within India, so many diverse people within India, languages, experiences. That India is one single thing is a myth. India is a heap of broken images that are put together. Any country for that matter, not only India. That India is one single entity is a meta-narrative. Because the mini narratives of India, all the people's stories within India will amount to a heap of broken images. All the people in India do not have the same story. So, postmodernism, famously Jean-Francois Lyotard, claimed that postmodernism is incredulity to meta-narratives. Jean-Francois Lyotard famously defined postmodernism as incredulity to meta-narratives. Incredulity means disbelief. There are so many meta-narratives built around us. The meta-narrative of femininity or masculinity. All men are like this. Men are this. That is a meta-narrative. All women are beautiful. All women are submissive. All women are emotional. All women have children. All women are loving to their families and caring to their families. All women sacrifice. None of these is entirely true. There are thousands and millions of women probably who are not like this. So meta-narrative is one grand story that hides. It hides instabilities, contradictions, fissures, exceptions. It presents one grand story as the story of everybody. Meta-narrative presents the story of somebody or some minority or some powerful people as the story of everybody. All people are different from one another. They have different mini narratives. Postmodernism explores the mini narratives, not the meta-narratives. Postmodernism often shocks us, surprises us, gives us the unexpected. This is the postmodern toilet house. This is postmodern toilet house. A house made in the shape of a toilet. Can you imagine? How different and shocking. And there are so many such examples in postmodernism where, like, take magic realism again as example, where the unexpected and the bizarre are brought in front of us. Think of postmodern art. Now I come to another concept within postmodernism, the concept of simulation. Jean Baudrillard was the French philosopher who talked about simulations and simulacra. Simulations and simulacra. What do you mean by that? Reality is replaced by its representation, said Baudrillard. Reality is replaced by its representation. We are all representations rather than reality. We try to appear in front of the world in a certain way. We want to create our identity in this manner. The clothes we wear, the company we keep, the houses we live in, the places we go to, the tattoos we make on our body, all are ways in which we construct ourselves in a different way, which is not the real. We are all pretending. We are all replacing our reality with something else, thinking that that is the identity or that is the reality. So in this postmodern world, reality has been replaced by its representation. Reality has been completely replaced by its representation. And this happened in stages, says Baudrillard. Baudrillard says that this happens in stages. This is the first stage of simulation that you see here. This is a painting by L.S. Lowry. And Baudrillard said this is first order simulation. What is happening here? This painting depicts mid-20th century Europe. In mid 20th century, Europe was very dull, unexciting. People lived very monotonous lives. This dull, monotonous reality is represented by L.S. Lowry in these paintings. These paintings show dull, monotonous life of the 20th century, exactly as it is. So at first, simulation represented reality exactly as it is. Representation was the same as reality. Look at this again, L.S. Lowry, same kind of paintings, monotonous, dull life. Now, this is another painting which represents second order simulation. This painting is by John Atkinson Grimshaw. What John Atkinson Grimshaw did is that he represented Liverpool, Hull, such cities. There were actually cities where industrial revolution was raging at this time. At this time, industrial revolution was raging in these cities. John Atkinson Grimshaw painted Liverpool and Hull without showing the squalor, the misery, without showing the struggles of the working classes. Instead of that, what did he do? Instead, he glamorized reality. He painted wet pavements, misty atmosphere, moonlight. He glamorized reality instead of showing the squalor and misery. This is second order simulation. Imagine I have a dog at home. I put up a picture of the dog on the gate. Beware of dog. If my dog is an old, mongrel, okay, not a pedigree dog or anything. My dog, I took a puppy from the street and brought it up. Ordinary looking, not at all ferocious looking dog. Very ordinary dog, like this. If I take this picture of this dog and put it on the gate, that is first order simulation. If I put the picture of this dog in Photoshop and put some ferocious teeth, that is second order simulation. Are you getting me? I'm glamorizing the reality a little bit. All of us are always in second order simulation. We don't show our reality. We will put on makeup and some nice clothes and we will sit in second order simulation always. Third order simulation is when my dog is this dog, but I am putting one German Shepherd's picture instead. That is third order simulation. I am changing that reality and replacing it with another. Did you understand? Instead of my mongrel, I am showing one German Shepherd. That is third order simulation. Example is René Magritte's painting, The Human Condition. In this painting, the whole thing is a painting. In this painting, there is a painting within the painting. See, in this big painting, there is a painting within the painting. This painting within the painting hides the fact that this big thing is a painting. We feel like this is the painting. We think that this outside window is reality. But actually, this window is not reality. That is also painting, isn't it? Are you getting me? So, this painting within the painting hides the fact that this is, entire thing is painting. For example, we dress up as something else and put a picture in Facebook. We take a selfie in Facebook and we dress up as, okay, I go to Kashmir. I go to Kashmir and I put on Kashmiri clothes and I dress up like Kashmir Ki Kali from the movie and put my selfie in Facebook. Imagine. I am acting and putting a selfie. And all of you will say, wow, what acting? You are dressed up like a heroine in the movie. What acting? That picture that I put on Facebook will hide the fact that my ordinary pictures are also acting. Everything is acting. Always I am pretending. Not only that Kashmir Ki Kali picture, but always I am pretending. But that Kashmir Ki Kali picture hides the facts that I am acting at other times. I hope you understood. Fourth order simulation is when my dog is dead. I don't have a dog now. Still, I put a picture on the gate. That is, reality is not there. There is only representation. Signified is not there. There is only signifier. Did you understand? Like these paintings of Mark Rothko. This is fourth order simulation, where these signifiers do not represent anything. These signifiers do not have a signified. Is that clear? Take a look at this. This is a very famous painting. Peasant Shoes by Van Gogh. This is modernism. Whereas Diamond Dust Shoes by Andy Warhol. This is postmodernism. This is a very famous analogy. This is modernism. This is postmodernism. Here, there is only the signifier. There is no signified. Here, there is the signifier, and the signifier laments that the signified is absent or gone. This kind of a peasant culture is gone. That is being lamented here in this painting. This kind of a peasant culture is gone. That is being lamented here. This painting shows that there are only signifiers, no signifieds. Another painting of Diamond Dust Shoes. So that, there I have come to the end of postmodernism, the presentation on postmodernism. Did you like it? Did I do justice to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Truly.
When you teach and write, please bring in application level examples like this. For those of you who need to know the basics, these examples will help you remember. For those of you who are researchers or teachers, you can use all this to do a better job at teaching theory or writing theory in research papers, etc. now, I hope. That is my aim.
Sure, ma'am.
It clears all idea of my
Thank you. I'm overwhelmed by all these theories and discuss. So I'm just taking a 2-minute break. Just tell me something, not necessarily praise, but anything else, any question or anything, any observation that you made?
your
How much of
examples are truly awesome.
Right. Thank you.
ma'am, how much of theory part that we can expect for the UGC net?
A lot these days.
I mean,
Theory and culture studies are both asked a lot these days.
okay. I mean, yeah, not only the names of the experiments. I mean, in the
Names and concepts they ask, but they also
Yeah.
ask questions whereby they test whether you understand the concept.
Okay, ma'am.
Which of the following describes, say, difference, for example? Which of the following is not an explanation of the concept of difference? Like that, they can ask.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, one more question is that though we study African literature, Caribbean literature, and Australian literature, and the new contemporary books that are coming, I still love to believe that the core is from British literature. Is it so?
Well, you can think whatever you want. Subjective response can be there. British literature is dear to us, if at all it is, because there is a lot of material on British literature. We know about it a lot. We are used to it a lot, especially since we have memories of colonialism and colonial past, especially in India. But I should definitely say British literature has a lot of gaps and silences. British literature has done a lot of injustice to us, not only the British politicians, but literature also. Even in the great canonical texts like Mansfield Park or Jane Eyre, there are so many ways in which the author or the text is supporting colonialism, patriarchy, ideas that have oppressed humanity, which has led to historical disasters. And it is wonderful, even though the language of new literatures may not be as, endearing, because the British and the Americans are native speakers. They had years of writing behind them. They had so much money behind them. They had so much of education, everything that is made possible by looting us, actually. And that is why they are so great in their thinking and writing and imagery and rhyme and everything. The colonial people, the new literature people, they struggle. We know, we are all, suppose one of us wants to become a writer. How far is it possible? We may have ideas, but where do we have the time to sit and write books and wait for them to be published and then finally make money out of it? We don't have the time. We have to pass exams, we have to get a job, we have to look after household chores, because our conditions are very different. Only rich people somehow manage, mainly speaking. I'm not saying that poor people don't become writers, they do. But the struggle is more for them. The struggle is more for women here. The struggle is more for lower classes here. Whereas it is easier for the whites. You can't deny that. And in India and other post-colonial countries, even though the language may not be great, the technique may not be great, the meanings that they give us, the content that they give us, the ideas and the liberation that they give us from mainstream perceptions, that is what is important in literature these days. Originally, once upon a time, literature gave importance to the sound of the text, the look of the text, the unity of the text, the how well written it is or well published it is. But today, literature is not only about the rhyme and rhythm and perfect language. Literature is all about what you have to say. Sometimes very poor people, like tribal people or prostitutes or criminals, have also written literature. Obviously, their literature will not be comparable to the American or British literary works, because they have no education, they have no background, they have broken lives. But they should also speak. Their literature should also be heard. Their literature should also touch us, because they have been denied voice, and what they speak is more relevant to humanity than what Shakespeare or some other great writer may speak. It is our voice that is being heard through these poor writers, through these marginal writers. They are speaking for us. We are empowered because of that in many indirect ways. So it is liberating. Literature has broken away from its pretentious molds, its age-old classical ideas. Literature has broken away and spilled over into the ordinary lives, into everyday lives, and literature has changed completely in the recent times, which is why this comparison arises, which is why you said this is because of all this. What you said is right. As literature that can be read for pleasure or recited or remembered with a complacent mind, great classics are definitely the greatest works. But contemporary literature is completely different. It is another thing altogether. It is like a different plate. It is not the same. It cannot be compared. You cannot say, for example, Dalit literature is full of dirt and darkness and anger. It disturbs you. It is not so sophisticated. It doesn't want to be sophisticated also. But that doesn't mean Dalit literature is not literature. That is another thing altogether. Your question is like asking me, is it better to eat biryani from a restaurant, or is it better to eat home-cooked food? Both are good. And in some occasions, you need to eat biryani. In some occasions, you need to eat home-cooked food, which may not be that tasty, but it has its other advantages, like that.
Ma'am, I completely understood what you said, but my question was whether I should focus more on British English for the NET exam.
Oh, you were talking about the NET exam.
Yeah.
British literature used to be like 60% of the questions, but I can't say that anymore. Recently, they're asking a lot of questions from other literatures, then linguistics and English in India, cultural studies. So many British literature questions are comparatively less these days. That doesn't mean you should not study British literature, because other questions are not predictable. You don't know where they will ask from. British literature is predictable. Only from these authors they will ask like that, even though it's vast. So British literature, definitely you should study thoroughly and answer all the questions they ask. Otherwise, you may not pass.
Yeah.
Because the other is a gamble. The other is even vaster. Understood.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, I got a question. So, moving from structuralism to post-structuralism and postmodernism, so we see that the literature is sort of demystified, and meaning related to it is not only abstracted but also, in a way, lost. So, like, if there is no transcendental signified, thanks to Derrida. So, like, as literature students, what we do is we play with words, we analyze them, we interpret them, and like, we do all sort of things. So, like, are we just trying to amuse ourselves? Like, where do we go from here?
It's a very relevant question, but I guess it also contains the answer. In the past, we were looking for fixed meanings and we found them in texts. That was the end of it. It was very comfortable to read like that. It was like opening a jewel box and finding the jewel within it. Like I said in the earlier case of British literature and other literatures, the focus of studies has completely changed. Earlier, the focus of studies was to open the jewel box, find the jewel of meaning, close it. Now the focus is not on finding the meaning. The focus is on trying to get meanings, to create meanings, to find the relevance of this text in your life or in your subjective experience. Even if whatever students are writing and saying in the classrooms or in the examinations may not be as great as what the critics would say. Earlier, we would study what the critics said and just reproduce it in exams. There was nothing original and there was nothing to touch our lives in it. We never applied it in our lives. But today, when we talk about texts and interpret it in our own ways and talk about our experience of texts and probably relate it to our lives, etc., even though we may not come across such grand pronouncements as the critics did, there is more relevance to literature and literature studies now than before. And the students, when they play with words and cut and copy paste and all that, it is wrong, it is not enough, but that is definitely a first step. By more and more practice, by the time you become professors, you would get the hang of it and you would start reading on your own, because it happened with me like that. In the beginning, I did not know, okay, deconstructive reading, Marxist reading, feminist reading, all these terms I found, but I did not know exactly how to do it. We ended up, if you want to do a feminist reading of a book, you ended up reading feminist theory and feminist analysis of the book and copy pasting it and rewriting those ideas in your words. That is what you did. But I did reach a level later on in life, so, changing over from that student phase into a better student phase, when I'm able to, whatever happens in life or I see around me in society, I'm able to connect it with that theory or this concept or this experience or this text. And theory has therefore changed my life and perceptions. It has made me a better human being, a better mother, a better teacher, a better neighbor. I have become more tolerant. I've become more deeper in understanding things. So at a personal level, in an academic level, it changes. Even though in the beginning, especially in countries like India, where we don't use creativity in the classroom or original thinking in the classroom, it is difficult, but that is only a passing phase. Keep on doing, playing with words. Eventually, it will pay, I think. It is necessary that you do it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
I gave you a very emotional play with words answer to it, I suppose. I also played with my emotions and thoughts rather than give you a very academic, theoretical answer. Shall we move on?
Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking, oh my God, I talked on and on and on, and I still have time. We'll go up till a maximum 8:30, right? So I have time. Now, the aim of this webinar, let me once again make clear, this is a webinar. This is not like a classroom lecture. In a classroom lecture, one by one, all the concepts very academically deliberated and everything should be covered within the syllabus, whatever is there. In a webinar, there should be a different angle. You are not classroom students. You are all from different backgrounds and your purposes are different. So I need not cover every single thing like that, like we do in the classroom and bore you to death. I should just rather give you a unity and coherence and a perspective and practical examples that you can use, practical slides and images that you can use. So that is why I'm doing like this. I just wanted to make myself clear. Now, colonialism began in the 15th century when Columbus discovered America and Vasco da Gama discovered the sea route to India. The New World was a very big dream for the Europeans. They went and settled down there. At first, they settled down in the eastern region of America. Eventually, they spread a little more to the west. They colonized Latin America also. And they began to exploit the natural resources. They began to displace the native people. The effects of colonialism were very detrimental. It was very bad. Whole populations got destroyed. Languages and literatures got destroyed. Natural resources got depleted. Lots of animals and plants and trees got destroyed. This is the first settlement of America that started colonialism. Jamestown or Virginia. And along with the establishment of colonies came Christian imperialism. One of the aims of colonialism was to spread Christianity, because they believed that Christianity brings new salvation. The poor black people do not have any proper religion and they will all go to hell. And Christianity, the aim of Christian missionaries was to save their souls. This was the white man's burden, to save these people from political destruction as well as moral destruction. Missionaries did a lot of good work also. In states of India like Kerala, we have more education. We have better English skills probably than some other parts of India. Because for a long, long time, there was convent education here. Because we have a tradition of Christianity here. The churches, the missionaries, the nuns, they have done a lot of wonderful work preserving knowledges and giving it to people. I can't deny that. But along with that, there was also the aim of controlling us and manipulating us, and political aim of ruling over us, and also the economic intentions. They wanted to do trading, for which they used up our natural resources. Lots of animals, thousands and thousands of animals were killed. And grasslands, land was turned into grassland for grazing of cattle, etc. In America, this happened and this changed the landscape. It destroyed nature. You can see that in Heart of Darkness also, in the context of ivory trade. And in all parts of India, in all parts of the world, not only in Latin America or America, but also Africa as well as Asia, the indigenous people were controlled. They were given some foreign goods and their precious natural resources were used up. You can see that in colonial texts. And this contributed to the white man's burden. There are many humorous depictions of the white man's burden. The white men carrying the black men and the Arabs. But also, actually, it is these black men and the Arabs carrying the white men. This is Uncle Sam, the representation of America. And this is John Bull, the representation of Britain. And look at another picture of Christian imperialism. In Robinson Crusoe, I'm reminded of Robinson Crusoe because Robinson Crusoe tames Friday, teaches him English. Robinson Crusoe is a very colonial text. Robinson Crusoe is taming Friday, teaching him English and Christianity. And the sea route around Africa, that is what eventually led them to colonize India. From Portugal, they came like this, Vasco da Gama, and colonized India here. They landed at Kapad here, as you know. Thus, the British Empire spread across Americas, Africa, India, Australia, the land where the sun will never set. The map of the British Empire, another map. Map making became, cartography became a very important activity as a part of this. The people, the white people who landed in our lands, in Africa or India, etc., they saw all the native people, but it looked like these natives are not even human beings. They called our land terra nullius. That means uninhabited land. They thought, they felt like our natives are not even human beings. And colonialism did a lot of harm to our politics, to international politics. Look at the many of the countries that colonialism created have boundaries like this. Very straight line boundaries, as if cut with a pair of scissors. And also, colonialism divided these West African countries into West African regions into very small countries. None of these countries is self-sufficient. There is perpetual civil war here because of the unnatural, unscientific divisions of colonialism. As you know, colonialism also divided India and Pakistan, which led to perpetual fighting. Now, examples of colonial attitude. This is an advertisement of soap using the theme of white man's burden, encouraging white people to teach cleanliness to members of other races. This advertisement shows that it is the white man's burden to teach the virtues of cleanliness. Pear soap advertisement. You can see here a black man bowing before the white man and taking the gift of soap from him. You can also see colonialism and seafaring in the background. Terra nullius means uninhabited land. They feel like this land belongs to them. The natives are all intruders, whereas they are the intruders. You must have seen memes from America. Donald Trump was saying all the immigrants should leave this land. And the natives are asking Donald Trump, oh, really? Because the whites are also immigrants. They are not the original inhabitants. Sorry. From the Devil's Dictionary. Ambrose Bierce humorously wrote Devil's Dictionary, where he critiqued perspectives. Look at how he defines aborigines. Persons of little worth found cumbering the soil of a newly discovered country. This is the white man's attitude. They soon cease to cumber. Instead, they fertilize. Look at colonial literature. Robinson Crusoe, Heart of Darkness, A Passage to India. All these texts show colonial attitudes. Robinson Crusoe, I already talked about. Heart of Darkness, you know. Passage to India shows Adam Aziz, a Muslim Indian, being unfairly accused by Adila Quested of assaults. She was, just before this happened, she was asking Adam Aziz, how many wives do you have? It's a very great insult because he didn't have many wives and his one wife was already dead also previous year. What if he has many wives? It is none of her concern. Cultures are different. So there is a lot of subtle elements like this in colonial literature that are glossed over. In Jane Eyre, Gayatri Spivak has famously talked about it. In Jane Eyre, St. John Rivers wants Jane to go with him and be a missionary's wife in India. Jane refuses. But this missionary angle, what the whites were doing in India, that is not talked about. That is silent in that text. Colonial literature subtly supports, literature of the colonial period subtly supports colonial ideology. Now, with that little introduction to colonialism, let me come to post-colonialism. A very major figure in post-colonialism to start with was Frantz Fanon. His first book, Black Skin, White Masks, is subtitled The Experiences of a Black Man in a White World. Here he talks about, for the first time, he talks about the psychology of the oppressed people. He talks about how the oppressed people are affected in the mind. And later on, he went on to write The Wretched of the Earth also. For the first time, we begin to understand that colonialism is not just about economic or political dominance. It is also about internal subjugation. For example, the white people told us that you are inferior because you have brown skin. We can't change it. You are inferior because you are second language speakers of English. We have learned English so much, we perhaps know more English. I have seen British people, native British people who cannot spell properly. Their grammar is wrong. I have seen people like that. So being a native speaker does not give superiority to anybody. No, it is not whether you're a native speaker, but whether you know correct language. That is what matters, isn't it? But forever in ELT, we are second language speakers of English. I have a PhD in English literature. I'm a teacher of English literature, but if I want to go to their country, I will still have to write their IELTS. So we are subjugated racially forever. And also there is the psychology of the colonizer also at work here. How the colonizer wants us to be in his image so that we can reinforce his power. Such psychological issues of colonialism for the first time were discussed by Frantz Fanon. What is that? The Wretched of the Earth. The Wretched of the Earth is the magnificent work where he, for the first time, gives voice to the experience of decolonization. And from the beginning of the book, unambiguously, he says decolonization is a violent phenomenon. When colonization destroyed our cultures and identities and lifestyles, religions, everything it destroyed, he is arguing that decolonization will be equally violent. There was a lot of hue and cry in the world against this. People criticized Frantz Fanon for saying this. And for Jacques Derrida for Jean-Paul Sartre for supporting it. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote the introduction to this book. And how colonialism destroyed the colonies. That is a very important concern of post-colonialism. Post-colonialism talks about how colonialism destroyed the colonies. Look at the iconography of emaciated black men carrying a white man. Black men in chains with a black warder. These days you do research on iconography, on images. You can study these images like a text, like a novel. Ivory traders. In Heart of Darkness, you see such people. The Africans were exploited to an extreme end to risk their lives and to live away from their cultures and societies in order to produce ivory so that the white people could sell it. These people got hardly anything. They risked their lives and destroyed their natural resources. So much ivory. A very heart-rending picture of Africa feeding France. It is not that France fed Africa, it is the other way. This is Edward Said. As you know, a very important concept in postcolonialism is that of Orientalism. Orientalism is about the stereotypes that the white men created about Africa, Asia. Orientalism refers to the white man's perception of the blacks. The white man always looked at the black man as lazy or violent or immoral or uncultured. Whereas necessarily the black man wasn't all that. The white man thrust upon the black man those qualities that he was afraid to acknowledge in himself. If you do not understand, I will explain. I have a small child, baby child, 3-4 years old. The child throws everything about and doesn't keep the house clean. Yeah, true. But it is not only the child, it's also me. I also throw my things around and I don't keep anything in order. When some guests come, I will tell them, oh, I'm so sorry, the house is in such disorder. It is my child. My child is throwing everything about. And the guests will say, it's okay. What am I doing here? I'm afraid to acknowledge that I am the reason for the disorder. I'm afraid to acknowledge that I have the same problem that I attribute my son with. Like that, the white people attributed to the black people their own qualities that they were afraid to acknowledge in themselves. Men in the patriarchal society are afraid of being emotional. So they made it look like only women are emotional. If a woman is not emotional, if a woman is strong, then the patriarchal society will say, are you a woman? Because according to patriarchal definition, you have to be emotional. And Orientalism, therefore, is not only about the colonized people, it is about the colonizers. Orientalism is about the colonizers also, what they are afraid in themselves. There is a lot of Oriental photography, photographs taken by white people that depicted an Orientalist perspective. Look at the depictions of Arab women, either as fully clad or as beautiful and sensuous. Many times Oriental women were depicted without clothes on because they were considered sensual and physical, amorous, lethargic, waiting for their lovers or whatnot. Orientalism, this is part of the Great Exhibition of London in 1851. Orientalism depicted, Great Exhibition of London depicted Eastern cultures in a very Orientalist manner. Turkey was stereotyped as the bazaar with a lot of food and Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, power went off suddenly. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, it's visible.
I'm on hotspot, but it said your
Yes,
internet
ma'am.
connection is unstable when I connected. So if any disruption happens, don't go anywhere. I'll come back. I have all sorts of devices here by which I will come back. Don't worry. Okay. So I was talking about Orientalist depictions in the Great Exhibition of London. This is another painting, a picture of the Orientalist stalls in the Great Exhibition. Lot of hunting and poaching that destroyed our forests. Orientalist art next. These are not, the other paintings were not art, they were actual incidents. Look at Arabs depicted as lounging and lethargic and sensual, without clothes on, lusty. So much exposure of the bodies. See, what is happening? Death and violence. A lot of women depicted as lounging. Turkish bath, Orientalist painting, very famous. The practice of Orientalism continues today in the form of Islamophobia. This is the cover page of a book. The fear of the Orient, the othering of the Orient, the depiction of the Orient as exotic. This is not over. There is a neo-Orientalism or a new form of Orientalism in the form of Western Islamophobia. In the context of 9/11, we have seen the very ugly side of this. Am I gone? Am I there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Even when it is true that some terrorist organizations are there in the Arab countries, that doesn't mean there are no terrorist organizations in any other part of the world. That doesn't mean these terrorist organizations were fed by Western politicians also. All this is well known to everybody. Taliban had active Western support at the beginning, for example. So it is not the complete story when you say an Islamophobic narrative of the world. It is not the entire story. It hides, it's a meta-narrative that hides a lot of things. It is definitely Orientalist. The world is a very bad place these days because of these realities. Gayatri Spivak is a very important theorist in this regard of post-colonialism. Gayatri Spivak, a professor of Columbia University, has contributed significantly to literary debates because of her engagement with translating Derrida's texts and writing texts of her own, such as In Other Worlds, essays in cultural politics. Gayatri Spivak has talked about the subaltern. She was part of the subaltern group, and she questioned the very idea of the subaltern even when she was part of the group. And she coined the concept of strategic essentialism. When we are using our essentialist identities like Dalit or women, we are strategically using it to subvert power. It is good. We have to do it. That idea. She developed the concept of worlding. Certain things like I told you about Jane Eyre. Certain concepts, certain colonial ideas, etc., are naturalized in literary texts as if it is normal. It is okay. That is the concept of worlding. And post-colonialism gives voice to a lot of marginal people, like I was saying a little while ago. Not only the mainstream writers and the mainstream voices, but also the voiceless margins come to the fore by the act of post-colonial critics. A lot of post-colonial critics like Gail Omveth, Arun Prabha Mukherjee, etc. have contributed significantly to Dalit studies. A lot of post-colonial critics have contributed in the realm of ethnic minority studies. Post-colonialism engages in translation for this end. A lot of unheard of, voiceless people in the world have been read across the world because of being translated into English. Translation is a kind of interpretation. Translation is a kind of resistance. And I just gave this example of Veerama, Life of an Untouchable, as an example. It is just one of the many books that post-colonial studies has drawn upon. Gayatri Spivak has talked about 3 women's texts as engaged in worlding. In White Sargasso Sea, in Jane Eyre, as well as Frankenstein. These are the 3 books that she talked about, where subtly patriarchal and colonial ideas have been taken for granted, have been presented as if they are normal. The presentation of Bertha Rochester as a mad woman, justifiably Rochester leaving her and wanting to marry Jane Eyre, that is problematic. That is why White Sargasso Sea was written, even to show the other side of the story, to show what happened to Bertha Rochester that made her mad. So in Frankenstein also, the injustice that the monster suffered, the cast is analogous to the blacks or the natives of colonies being turned into monsters. So that is the concept of worlding in women's texts, discussed by Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak. I am giving you these ideas and these pointers. Please read up extra on them. Please explore more. In Udemy course, I have put a detailed video of these aspects of post-colonialism already. This is Homi K. Bhabha. Homi K. Bhabha also is a very important critic who has contributed ideas like hybridity, ambivalence. Bhabha is a Parsi writer, and being a Parsi, he is by identity hybrid. He is a Parsi ethnic minority, but they belong to India, and then most of the Parsis like Bhabha have also emigrated. They are naturally hybrid. It is from his own life that he is talking about hybridity. And the Parsis speak like the British, act like the British. They imitate the British. This act of mimicry of the colonizer is double-edged. At once we are reinforcing their power when everybody looks like them, when all of us wear jeans, for example, Western clothes, for example. The Western culture is getting more prominence, obviously, but we negotiate with Western culture, we change it, we use it to our own purposes in such a way that this mimicry also becomes resistance. This mimicry also becomes resistance. For example, tea is a colonial drink. Tea is a colonial drink. The white people drank tea. They would put hot water, they would put tea leaves into it, and they would pour it into a cup, a ceramic cup. They would sit around a table in gardens, etc., and sip this tea. This is not how we make tea in India. There are at least 1,000 kinds of teas in India, I think. Some people in India do not even use milk. They will boil, they do not even use water. They will boil milk and put tea powder in it and drink. In Kerala, we make tea and we will pour it like this. Have you seen Malayali eateries making tea? We pour it like this from a distance and it will be frothy. Nowhere else in the world anybody makes tea like that. So that act is a mimicry. We are doing a mimicry of Western act of tea drinking. Likewise, our clothes, we wear their jeans with our kurta, isn't it? We wear very ethnic tops with jeans. That is an act of mimicry by which we make their culture ours. When we speak English with an Indian accent, that is also mimicry. We speak their language in our terms. They will have to learn from us if at all they want to understand what we are saying. So this is the concept of mimicry, which is double-edged, ambivalent. Hybridity, ambivalence, mimicry. Look at Priyanka Chopra. She is now in Hollywood. And none other than Dwayne Johnson is with her, posing. She is becoming a Western icon. Indian, Western, hybrid. She is an example of that. This is not the only example. This is not, Priyanka Chopra is not the only example. Years ago in Bobby, the movie Bobby, Dimple Kapadia played the role of an Anglo-Indian girl. She dressed in Western clothes. And why Rishi Kapoor's family did not want him to marry her, the character, I mean, was because she was Western and hybrid. That hybridity was the theme of the movie Bobby. Another example of hybridity. These churches, these are Celtic churches. These are Celtic churches. Churches with a circle around it. When Christianity came to England, the Celts changed the Christianity to suit themselves. I am wearing a Celtic dragon tattoo. That is another example of hybridity. It doesn't belong here, but I put it here. Other examples of hybridity. From an early 20th century, you can see a couple like this. This gentleman is dressed completely in Western clothes. This is contemporary. This girl is dressed in Western clothes, living a Western style, lifestyle. Examples of hybridity. Another concept related to post-colonialism that is important in cultural studies is that of Black Atlantic. It was Paul Gilroy who talked about this concept of Black Atlantic. Across the Atlantic Ocean, in Europe, Africa, Americas, there are blacks. You cannot talk of them as Americans or Europeans, but they are like another nation. They are like another entity, the Black Atlantic community. Across the Atlantic, the blacks across the Atlantic. Their identities are defined by trade and commerce and history. You know, you can't just call them Africans or Europeans or Americans. They are more than that. This idea of Black Atlantic is against a purist idea of a nation. It is against nationalism. It critiques our mainstream perceptions of identity, race, and culture. This is a slave ship, a ship that is a symbol of the Black Atlantic. A slave ship is the symbol of the Black Atlantic. And then cartography, map making. You know, map making was not only an act of truly making a map. It was an act of creating an identity to the Easterners. It was an act of Orientalist act, I should say. It was an Orientalist act of defining the Eastern cultures in certain ways. Cartography, maps play a very important role, not only in colonialism, but also in colonial literature. Heart of Darkness refers to maps very significantly at the beginning. References to cartography and map making in literature. That can be a research project. And look at this heart-rending picture of Africa. Look at all these countries unscientifically, artificially cut up. How come, how will ever civil war end in these countries? Because people who are naturally together are cut up, and people who should be separated are put together. And then the post-colonial concept of diaspora. Diaspora is famously represented by this picture of the dandelion. The seeds flying away from the home country. Diaspora was originally a term that referred to the Jewish people. And diaspora refers to the scattering of people across the globe, from one country across the globe, giving rise to hyphenated identities. Diaspora is related to concepts like home and borders. Diaspora is related to the concepts of home and borders. Home is not an objective entity. Home is not an objective entity. Home is provisional. Home is a subjective experience. Home is about how we inhabit the borders. For example, in a hostel room, one corner can become your home. For a poor man, the railway station can become his home. When I traveled in England, I have seen a lot of homeless people across England making their home in bus stands, in bus stops. Bus stops are covered, so they live inside a bus stop. They have a whole lot of things stacked up there because they are homeless. The government has done nothing for them. It is an act of, it's a political act, I think, to live in a bus stop like that. There is a lot of diasporic literature. Diasporic literature deals with the concepts of alienation, multiculturalism, and cultural appropriation or cultural acculturation or cultural abrogation. Abrogation is rejection. It deals with the concept of contact zone where two cultures intersect. It deals with the concept of cultural plurality and hybridity. We are all hybrid. We have the colonized people's culture as well as colonizers' culture. When we live away from our homes, we get the culture of the parent country. So diasporic literature has been a very important part of literary studies. I have just put a quick list of diasporic writers here from across the world. In NET and such exams, diasporic writers is a very, very important aspect of the exam. They will definitely ask questions. For example, Shyam Selvadurai. And today, we have as part of post-colonialism the concept of neo-imperialism. Today, colonialism has ended, so to say, but imperialism has taken on new forms. We have globalization, which is effectively the imperial domination of the multinational corporations over the countries of the world. Multinational corporations rule over us now and subjugate us in new ways. Our countries like India will remain developing because the multinational corporations, the global masters, they want us to be corrupt so that they can bribe our governments and get more and more advantages out of our countries. We are the biggest market. There is a lot of back end activity happening in every country these days, where nations are manipulating governments and populations. How that happens has also been written in many literary works. I'm reminded of the cultural studies term, 5 scapes of Arjun Appadurai. The 5 scapes, as Arjun Appadurai put it. And this is a list of post-colonial works from across the world. Gabriel Today, post-colonial literature has changed its name and nature. And today we talk a lot about world literature. These are examples of post-colonial literature, but you can also say these are examples of world literature. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Salman Rushdie, Toni Morrison, Isabel Allende, Haruki Murakami. Just a random list, in no way complete. But all these books express broken up, fragmented narratives of broken up people trying to put together their reality, dominated over by history and mainstream cultures. Another aspect of post-colonialism is multiculturalism. It is a theory in itself. There are different kinds of multiculturalism, and how multiculturalism has taken on new forms. Very, very pertinent in research is education under multiculturalism, identity formation under multiculturalism, how multiculturalism can be turned into a positive factor. That is an ongoing research everywhere in the world. How to give equal representation to everybody within multiculturalism, etc. When you talk about post-colonial literature, we always begin from this great writer, Chinua Achebe, who in 1958 inaugurated the institution of post-colonial literature with his Things Fall Apart, where he talked about how colonial history has affected African cultures negatively. This is Ngugi wa Thiong'o. While Chinua Achebe changed English language and began to write in English by using a lot of African words. I hope you understand. Chinua Achebe used English language in such a way that the English native speakers will have to look up the glossary, because Chinua Achebe changed English language like Arundhati Roy has changed English language using a lot of Indian words and expressions. That is one way of using English by the post-colonial writer. As Bill Ashcroft, Gareth Griffiths, and Helen Tiffin has pointed out in The Empire Writes Back. Another way in which the post-colonial writer engages with language is exemplified by Ngugi wa Thiong'o of Kenya. Chinua Achebe was from Nigeria. Ngugi wa Thiong'o rejected English language altogether, even though he was a very famous writer in English at that time. And he began writing in Gikuyu. Gikuyu is their native language. And as an act of rebellion or abrogation, he rejected English and began writing in Gikuyu. This is Wole Soyinka. Apart from being an author, he's also a well-known activist. He was exiled from his country, Nigeria. He reacted against the dictators like Robert Mugabe and Sabi, what is the name? That dictator? I'm a little tired and I am unable to get the name. My water. In his works also, Wole Soyinka has relentlessly criticized Nigerian culture, not only glorified it, he did not just glorify it, he criticized it. And he criticized the creamy layer that emerged in Nigeria after independence. He depicted the Nigerian War of Independence, and he was the first Nobel laureate from Africa, Wole Soyinka. This is our Anita Desai. Anita Desai has also made her mark as a post-colonial writer. She has depicted especially women's experiences under post-colonialism very poignantly in her long list of novels, starting from Cry the Peacock. How women are doubly marginalized is a very pertinent issue within post-colonialism. This is Nuruddin Farah, a Somali writer who has written very political novels in variations on the theme of an African dictatorship trilogy, Blood in the Sun trilogy, etc. Past Imperfect trilogy, etc. These novels are prescribed in universities and very, very important in literature studies these days. All these writers are. Because, as I said at the beginning, literature is not only about the form these days, it is about the content. It is what experience is depicted.
Excuse me, ma'am. It's
Yes?
Sani Abacha. It's Sani
Sani
Abacha.
Abacha. And this is Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood is a white among all of them. She is the only white that we saw. Margaret Atwood has also not only made her mark as the most famous of the Canadian writers, but also as a very important post-colonial writer worldwide, where she has talked about human identities being defined by post-colonial situations. Now, having traveled in Canada, UK, etc., and have had friends there, I should tell you one thing, that most of the whites that I know who are educated, I don't know that many, but still, most of the whites who are educated regret colonialism and the atrocities done by their governments so much. The most touching example I can give you is when 3 professors from Canada visited our tests. They had come to Kerala, and one of them was my husband's supervisor, and we are great friends with them. So they visited our tests, met our students, and our students interacted with them and talked to them, asked them questions. And when they chanced upon a question related to colonialism, you won't believe what happened. These very senior professors who are deans and very highly placed academics in very big universities like the University of British Columbia, they were all from the University of British Columbia, which is perhaps the second best university in Canada, and one of the top 10 universities in the world. That professor, you wouldn't believe what happened. She sat there and cried in front of everybody. She couldn't control her emotion because she feels sorry for the past history, for what history has done to us, for what the whites and their governments have done to us. I just hugged her and it was so beautiful. I know so many people like that who feel guilty, who feel terrible even talking about it. So even when I say how much the colonizers have destroyed our cultures, it is beautiful that today things have changed, even though politics is still the same, exploitation. People are not politicians. There are so many people out there in the world, in our enemy countries, in our historically oppressive countries. There are so many people who love us, who admire us and appreciate us. So as part of post-colonialism, I should also talk about this late development. There is also a coming together of the East and the West in beautiful ways. So much coming together of the East and West in art and culture and tourism. I have white friends who live in India because they don't want to go to their country. They think India is beautiful. They live like very ordinary Indians, living a small life. So 1,000 ways in which somebody can do research on this aspect. 1,000 ways in which in late post-colonialism, we can see the beautiful blending of the East and the West, the world coming together as if to repair the mistakes done in the past. Without mentioning that, I should not end this presentation because that is the most beautiful part of it. You can see such examples in Derek Walcott, the first Nobel laureate from the Caribbean islands, who has written very famous poetic works and plays also, like Omeros, Dream on a Monkey Mountain, etc. So now is the time for you to read about all this. Absolutely, I know that you have been reading, you know probably more than me. But whenever we discuss, some new perceptions and new experiences we get. So I hope this session has been fruitful. I hope it will motivate you to read up more on these writers. There is nothing like reading their works. At least a little bit of these writers we should read. And wish you all the best in that. We will meet again tomorrow to talk about Marxism, psychoanalysis, archetypal criticism, and feminism. Do you have any questions?
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Welcome.
Ma'am, post-colonialism and post-structuralism are synonymous or what?
That I did not mention. Thank you for asking. It is not post-colonialism. Post-structuralism and postmodernism are similar. I forgot to mention that point. Post-structuralism is a philosophical movement. Postmodernism is more about art and culture. But there are so many points where post-structuralism meet postmodernism. Post-structuralism is an overarching umbrella term. The ideas of post-structuralism can be found in postmodernism, post-colonialism, feminism, Marxism, etc. Post-structuralism is an overarching theory that encompasses a lot of other theories. And the ideas of post-structuralism are found in post-colonialism and postmodernism, such as plurality, meanings are constructed, hybridity, etc.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ma'am, one more question. Ma'am, I see somewhere post-hyphen colonialism and somewhere it is without hyphen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maushmi. Without you, what would I have done? You are pointing out all the gaps that I forgot to mention. Thank you. In the beginning, it was written with a hyphen. Post-colonialism was written with a hyphen. But then there was this theoretical understanding that hyphenation is wrong. Like African-American, Afro-American, hyphenated it was at the beginning. But today we don't do that. It is wrong to write it hyphenated, because hyphenation is like fragmentation. It is a secondary. So today it is preferably one word. African-American without hyphen. Post-colonialism as one word. That is more preferable these days.
Thank you.
Because post-colonialism, when it is hyphenated, it attaches us to colonialism as if we are the second part of colonialism, as if colonialism is still there, still dominant, still center. So hyphenation is avoided so that we don't remain like at the end of colonialism anymore. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Is that all? Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Good night.
Good night.
Sleep well.
Thank you, ma'am.
And let us
Thank
meet
you,
at
ma'am.
8 o'clock
Thank
tomorrow.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.